Hello, my name is George. I am one of Synthesia's many stock avatars. That is, I am a computer-generated image and voice. I am also the narrator of this video of the book, In Search of Competence and Uncommon Sense, written by Larry Markson. Larry wrote the book and this script in the first-person perspective. So while it may sound like I am impersonating him, to be clear, I am absolutely not impersonating him. 100% of all the words I am speaking were written by him, including this disclaimer. That also includes my facial expressions. I am just narrating the book. While you watch this video, or listen to this as an audiobook, keep in mind that I ain't him, or he ain't me, or, well, you get the picture. From Sherlock Holmes, A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In solving a problem of this sort, the grand thing is to be able to reason backwards. That is a very useful accomplishment, and a very real one, but people do not practice it much. In the everyday affairs of life, it is more useful to reason forwards, and so the other becomes neglected. There are 50 who can reason synthetically for one who can reason analytically. Note, Sherlock Holmes may have been a fictional character, but the author, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, accurately predicted the World War I method of submarine warfare that Germany would use and campaigned for the building of a tunnel under the English Channel, all years before the outbreak of World War I, and many decades before the building of the tunnel. When I was a kid in school, I had trouble with math tests. Don't get me wrong, I was reasonably good at math. The problem was on tests you needed to show your work. I didn't do math as I was taught. I did it in my head. Now, I was no prodigy by any means. Well, maybe an idiot, but not a savant. But my thought processes gave me a different approach to problem solving. In fact, my wife is constantly reminding me I don't think like normal people. While in a computer school in the Navy, at the beginning of my enlistment, my instructors were describing how digital computers solved math problems by a process called successive approximation. Eureka! That's pretty much how I did it. It was a simpler, faster, and more linear way to do math. At least it is for computers. And me. That is also why I really thrived in Boolean algebra, logical and linear thinking, and why I struggled mightily in calculus, non-linear, at least to my way of thinking. I only mention this to show there can be, for some of you, an easier approach to coming up with solutions to problems. Top-down design, thinking backwards, analytical thinking. They are all the same thing. It is the method used by all investigators when solving criminal cases, and engineers when reverse engineering. The problem is, it should be used by everyone in analyzing and solving nearly everything, but is not. When I talk about design, I'm not just talking about what an engineer, architect, or a fashion designer does. We all design every day. We design solutions, strategies, business plans, marketing plans, advertisements, widgets, our living spaces, work processes, etc. Design, in this context, is synonymous with problem solving and/or analysis. At the risk of being redundant, it bears repeating. It is the same process that detectives use to get to the truth and solve their cases. The much-used phrase, "follow the money," is a perfect example of top-down, backward, or analytical thinking. I like to call this process top-down design, only because that it is easier for me, because of my technical background, to visualize. Again, calling it thinking backwards, analytical thinking, or top-down design doesn't matter, as it is all the same thing. My approach to designing or analyzing anything is ass backwards from most people. I always work backwards, or as I like to call it, top-down. I prefer to follow the path of least resistance. Which is easier and faster? Climbing up a mountain or falling down a mountain? It's falling down the mountain, of course. Top down. If you are relating this to pain, that is entirely another issue. How many of you, when solving a maze puzzle, start at the finish and work backwards to the start? I do, because it is easier and faster. At the beginning of a problem to solve, the options to choose from are more numerous and less clear than they are at the finish and work backwards. The first thing a successful field commander does when developing a strategy is to analyze the enemy and look for his target's weaknesses, and then works backwards from there, assigning the resources at his disposal to attack or counteract the enemy's weaknesses. He does not first see what his own resources are, and then start the attack. A successful attack will be dictated by the weaknesses found in the opponent plans. See how design and strategic thinking work together. A Rube Goldberg design, unless it is an intentional artistic statement, is a result of climbing the mountain. Faced with a seemingly infinite array of ways to start, you just pick one, which in turn may lead into a blind alley you have to backtrack out of, wasting valuable time. Then you pick another direction, and after a few convoluted twists and turns, you find you are headed in an unrelated direction. Eventually, most will get to the end, but along the way wasting an extraordinary amount of time, and it also expends an equally large amount of resources. The number of steps taken to reach the end can become multiple rungs in the progress ladder. However, if you start at the objective, you will see only a couple options open to you to get the desired result. This takes you down one rung on the progressive design ladder. From there you will see more clear and best options open to choose from, thus taking you down another rung. Eventually you will arrive at the starting point with a solution that is simple and efficient, with the fewest steps possible in the shortest amount of time. It's the path of least resistance, and being an incorrigible couch potato, I'm all for that. Once when I was in a computer programming class, we were given a relatively simple programming task to accomplish. I did it in 5 or 6 lines of code, and I was done in about 3 minutes. I said it was simple, didn't I? Some students were still writing and erasing after 45 minutes. The professor had some of us go to the blackboard, pardon-moi, chalkboard. This was a long time ago after all, to write our code out so it could be critiqued. A couple of us had very compact code. A few more had at least double and triple the amount of code, and one person took up a whole wall. Those others were examples of a bottom-up, non-linear design process. When I was a test manager at GTE Information Systems, we needed a way to test the ASCII keyboards we manufactured. An engineer went off to his office and wasn't seen again for nearly a month. After the first couple of days, I got tired of waiting and got a hobby circuit board, some LEDs, resistors, 2 or 3 small ICs, wire and connectors, and made up a tester in an afternoon. It wasn't pretty, but it worked well, and more importantly, it was extremely cheap and compact. A month later, the engineer proudly showed up with a box, 10 inches to a side, and crammed full of expensive circuitry. It worked, and the complexity was impressive. Notice I said the complexity, and not the design. The design was cumbersome and anything but elegant. It was large, very expensive, and more prone to failure. Now, to someone reading or seeing a well-done design or analysis, they may think, "So what? That's obvious." You are right. It is obvious. So obvious that it wasn't thought of by anyone else. That's the point. When you practice top-down design, the solution or end result will always be simple, efficient, and obvious. But since most people don't design top-down, it is the obvious solution that is rarely discovered. Notice the similarity here to strategic thinking. Know your enemy and know yourself. That old Sun Tzu keeps raising his wise 2,500-year-old head. Again, top-down design is nothing more than starting at the end, and then deciding on the easiest and most efficient way to accomplish the last step first. Then you back up one step in the design and choose the easiest and most efficient way to accomplish that step. Then you repeat again until you arrive at the beginning. This is a guarantee that the analysis, design, or solution to the problem is as efficient and effective as possible and is accomplished in the fewest possible steps. Complex designs or solutions are inherently more problematic. The top-down approach to problem solving makes it easier to break down and understand or solve problems that we encounter every day. One other thing, it also helps to make you spin resistant. Did I already mention that I detest spin? Analytical thinking also happens to be the second leg of the three-legged platform that is leadership, or competence, the first leg being strategic thinking. Chapter 5 will be blessedly brief. There will be no personal anecdotes, but be forewarned, as you may have already noticed, I can get preachy. Next up is the third and final leg of the leadership platform. Click on Chapter 5, Ethical Thinking. As a reminder, please subscribe to my channel so you can be informed when Part 2, the search for uncommon sense, arrives.